In this video, I'd like to talk about preconditions, postconditions, and exceptions. Let me start out with some definitions. A precondition is a condition that must be true before a method executes to guarantee that it can perform its task. So we've talked about methods already, and we've described the inputs to that method. And now what we can do is think about what those inputs are going to look like. For a postcondition, that means that a postcondition means that a condition that the method guarantees will be true after it finishes executing, as long as the preconditions were true before it was called. For the context of this class, I'll just be putting that in the description of the return. We're also going to talk about exceptions, so we'll talk about what it means to throw an exception if our method's preconditions are not met. Basically, we want to ensure that the parameter values meet preconditions for our method. If the preconditions are not met, we will throw an exception, which will halt the method execution and provide the user with an error message. The syntax for throwing an exception in Java will look like throw and then the description of the exception. For us, that's going to be throw new illegal argument exception. And a legal argument exception can also include a message. When I talk about the input to the method in the method structure in Java, remember that we will have the visibility return data type, the method name, and then we will have in parentheses the data type of the input parameters. Because it has the keyword for the data type, for example, this could be int x, comma, int y, something like that, it already indicates what the type of that variable is, that parameter, but it doesn't guarantee anything more about what those values look like. And we may have extra restrictions on them to actually be able to run our code properly. Let's consider an example. The Ariane 5 was a rocket that exploded about 30 seconds after liftoff. And the cause of the failure was a software error in the inertial reference system. It basically read a 64-bit floating point number, as we know it, doubles, which was describing the horizontal velocity of the rocket, and thought that it needed to convert it into a 16-bit signed integer. That number was larger than 32,767, and it caused the conversion to fail, which caused the boosters to fire in weird directions, eventually causing the rocket to explode. And so basically, the Ariane 5 was able to go a lot faster than the Ariane 4, and that's why it caused this error. The integers were basically overflowing because of how fast this rocket was going compared to the previous one. So the previous one, the software worked because of how the rocket actually worked. So this basically indicates that the code that was written for this rocket should have been a little bit more robust and use the specs of the actual velocity that this rocket could take. To clarify what preconditions and postconditions look like, I'll have a couple of examples here. So let's start with some pseudocode to calculate the area of a square. As usual, we'll have the algorithm, the name of the algorithm, and then we'll say what the input is, which will be the length of the side, and we'll say what the output is, which is the area of the square. A thing that you can add to your pseudocode is something called a precondition, which is, in our case, to get the area of a square, we need to make sure that the side length is positive. If it's not, then we won't be able to calculate the area. So we require this to be able to calculate the area which is also going to inform what our algorithm will look like. Basically, if side is less than or equal to 0, then we'll raise an exception with a message, non-positive side length, and it'll print out the length of the side. Otherwise, we will calculate the area of the square, which is area is equal to side times side, and we'll return the calculated area. Let's look at what that area of a square looks like if I write it in Java code. So let's think about how we would fill in our Java docs. Well, area of a square is going to return the area of a square with a given side length. The parameter it's going to take in is side, which is the length of the side of a square. And it's going to return the area of the square that had that given side length. Now, one more thing I'm going to add to my Java docs is this thing called @throws, a legal argument exception. And you say what would cause the method to throw an exception rather than returning. Then in the body of the method, you can go ahead and convert your pseudocode into actual code. So if side is less than or equal to 0, throw new illegal argument exception, non-positive side length plus side, and otherwise return side times side. Now that we understand a little bit better what I mean by the preconditions and postconditions, let's talk about a program's correctness, and also this is indicative of why testing is important. Basically, if you run your program and you see that the call to that method violates the method's postconditions and the preconditions were met, you know that that was true, then that indicates to you that that method is doing something wrong. Maybe your method logic is incorrect. Basically, you have some sort of bug in your code, either in your logic or in the way you've implemented it. And so to ensure that your program runs correctly, although you can never be perfectly sure, is when writing a method, we must make sure, to the best of our abilities, that it is correct, which means that the postconditions will be satisfied for any input that's considered safe, things that we allow it to have. Let's look at another example to exemplify preconditions. So let's say I want to register a user to some sort of club, some online database. And so I'm going to start writing some Java doc for this. So it's called, the method is public static void register, and it's going to take in just the user's name. So it's going to register a user with the given name. And so the parameter that's taken in is the name of the user to be registered. And in this case, there's no return. Now, I do want to throw an exception if the provided name is empty. In other words, I have a precondition that means that somebody's name has to have at least some letters in it. When I go through and write this code, since I see that illegal argument exception, I can create an if statement. So if the name of the length is 0, then I can throw new illegal argument exception, name cannot be empty. Otherwise, we're going to proceed with the registration knowing that the string isn't empty. So at high level, this shows what a precondition that you might want to have for registering a user to your database might look like. Here's another example that exemplifies postconditions. So this method is called add1, and it's literally just going to add 1 to the value that's given as a parameter. So the input parameter is value, which is just some integer value, and it's going to return the result of adding 1 to the input value. In this case, I have no restrictions on value other than it is an int, which is already taken care of by the fact that Java took in the data type of the parameter, which happens right here. So I don't really have a precondition that I'm writing here, but I do have a postcondition, which is to say what the output should look like in the return statement. Great, so I'm just going to add 1 to the value. Int result is equal to value plus 1, and we can return the result. So here, obviously this is a pretty straightforward method, but it shows how we want to guarantee that at the end you really did add 1, and you would check this by testing. Here I just wanted to show you what the Java docs for a legal argument exception looked like. So you can always go to the Oracle website and you can see a description of what any class looks like. So this one is a legal argument exception. And the two that I've shown you were a legal argument exception and doesn't have any details on the inside, and a legal argument exception, and then some string that describes the detailed message. So just this shows you what arguments will look like. And of course, you might notice as well that there are all sorts of runtime exceptions. All of these. So these are all things that you might run into on accident while running your code. But these are different from the requirements that you yourself have put into the program. Good. So that's all I have for you. Thanks for watching and good luck.